Hi everyone, yes, so welcome. It's an amazing day, an amazing Monday. And with our discussion today, we are going to allow ourselves to focus on where it is that we find ourselves at in our season. And I always say that for some of us in our season, we have to allow ourselves to listen to the you in your season that we have discussed on Saturday. And today we are having our Such Woman of Color motivation that reminds us of our birthed womb, that reminds us of our representation, being woman in any generation. The representation that makes you the wow woman and that reminds you of your wow woman in your season. And why make you your wow woman is the fact that we are so often being introduced to another woman. And when you find yourself introduced to another woman, you so often question your wow fact. And when you question your wow fact, you so often take the wow away from that is the you in how you introduce yourself to someone. And therefore, to remind ourselves of the honor that is due you, the woman in your season and in our generation. The honor that I mention often, that you don't negotiate the you with what you are being introduced to and with what you find challenged about in your season. And today we are wearing our wow fact. It is our birthday dress that we had on in 2022, right? 22nd 11. I make a big fuss of it because it is that reminder to honor me being a woman in our generation, and to honor me being born from a woman, and to honor that part of the universe that is the birth of everything concerning us, of the flowers that blossoms, of the trees, of the amazingness around us, the birthness of our generation. And it is that when women learn that the honor belongs to them, then they learn the oneness in family, that is that the honor belongs to the men also. And when you learn to appreciate yourself, you learn to appreciate the next person. And therefore, that education that wants you and that requires you to give honor to you, right? Because often you would say that I would rather be quiet and not say it than saying that the honor belongs to me also in my season. It is that reminder that when you learn to honor you, you will learn to honor your womb. You learn to honor the man in your house. So that also is the womb, right? That also forms part of the womb of humanity. And therefore, that also forms part of that is the amazingness around us, right? And the amazingness about us. And we therefore do not question, we do not disregard that is our every representation of you in your season, our every representation of where you find yourself at in your season, and your every representation of the birth you in your season. And the birth you is that you own your name, Ribea, Elise, right? You own your birth name. And today I'm gonna start with my Mama Anna womb, right? My Mama Anna womb is amazing. My Mama Anna womb reminds me of that opportunity that I have been granted to be part of mankind, right? That opportunity that life gives us, that we grasp that opportunity with open-mindedness, with complete acceptance, and with therefore not questioning where we find ourselves at being human beings on earth, right? We do not question one another. We do not therefore also question what we are being challenged with, but we have been educated to find ourselves in that there is the protectiveness required in our generation. In our generation, in season, has to learn that when the universe grasps you and grants you that favor, right? As it grasps you with that protectiveness, and it grants you the favor to receive what it grasps, right? What it allows you to be part of, right? What it allows you, what it reminds you of, right? It gives you that you grasp, you hold on to that. That is your birthness, right? As human beings and being human beings on earth. And when you are being granted the opportunity, then you grasp that with all that the universe held unto you about, right? With all that mankind are required to hold onto about themselves. With all that you, the woman, are required to hold onto about yourself. It is when you are introduced to the next person, and then you do not question your introduction to someone, but you also do not question the you in the currentness of where you are being introduced to. It is that you can have people with the most glossy hair and the most glossiest clothes on and the most blossomingness of seasons, but if they don't receive what the universe gives them and hands unto them, then it is like that you take something, then you realize you actually do not have what you have received in your season. And therefore, Vogue always reminds us that when we educate, that Ribea, Elise's fancy is not there, but my representation of where I educate from is that speaks of all that I have received in my season, and therefore I do not require anything to tell me that with the funds in accordance to where I'm speaking from, I am now that in my season. I allow myself to accept that the universe has given me, and I receive that within my every season of representing me, Ribea Elise, born the seventh birth child, yes, from my mama's womb, the seventh birth daughter, and therefore I receive exactly the completeness of all that I am in my season and all that I'm required to be. It is not that you're gonna have to align yourself with the most money in the world, because we have learned people with the most money in the world have found a way to have them be where they are financially, with corrupting someone else or with having to kill someone else for what they have, right? And therefore we learn that you have with the honor that belongs to you. You give that honor to you to say that this opportunity of birth is exactly all that I'm required to have in my season, and with that I have all that I'm required to have. And therefore we represent with exactly that. That is you, the wow woman in your season, and the wow man in his season, that becomes part of the womb of mankind, that is the womb and that lives and exists from the womb of the amazingness of the universe. And we do not question where we find ourselves at, and we do not question how we're going to protect ourselves at, because in this world, as human beings on this earth, we are being educated that we are required that we are required to have ourselves be fine where we are at in our seasons, right? We are required to educate that is gonna have you be in that protective mindset, that humanity would have to learn to accept the one the other. Humanity have learned to accept mankind the way that mankind is, and humanity would have learned to not give up on one another so easily, right? To not question one another so easily, but to have that is complete acceptance with where we find ourselves at, that we are not challenged in that is our every requirement to respond to that is protective for us in our seasons. And therefore honoring the womb of the woman, her strength defined with her being born, right? With the birthness concerning her. And when she reminds herself that the birth fact of her is that requirement of her to respond to that is protected in a season, then she finds courage in that. There is the color that refines her in season. that the color sometimes differs in season, that the representation sometimes differs in season, but she finds courage in that. That is the color that explains everything about her in a season, and therefore she learns to take care of that. That is herself and the woman of color. We are born in that, that we are the color of everything concerning the universe. We are born in that, that we represent the seasons of the universe. We are born, mankind, in that, that we represent the completeness of the universe. And we are born in that, that we are reminded to receive that, that we have been educated and have been allowed to receive in our seasons. And therefore we do not question the birth you in your season. When we remind ourselves of the birthness in your season, we remind ourselves of the seed that was planted, right? And when the seed was planted, we were allowed to listen to the birth sound of the womb. And the birth sound of the womb is that requires us to find ourselves in that is the womb itself. The birth sound is that requires us to find ourselves in that is the womb itself. And when you are in the womb itself, you are in that is the protective environment, right? That is everything with its completeness of it. That is the moving that is out of your control sometimes. That is the echoing of sound that you sometimes cannot silence out. That is the loudness of all the colors that you hear about that you can't respond on the whole time. And that is the sound that requires you to be where you are with acceptance, with where you are at, right? The sound of acceptance when it comes to the birth womb, when it comes to being birthed on earth, being human beings, when it comes to being born the woman, you are required to accept where you find yourself at. We have learned that there's lots of questioning concerning men, women, and who's the most important and who should be the leader in the house. And that acceptance is that education that mankind has been educated about years ago. That is the sound of everything that is echoing around us and that is echoing concerning humanity and concerning where we find ourselves at. And when we are required to respond with that, there is acceptance in our season. We are required to listen to that. That is gonna be when we accept where we find ourselves at. We accept with complete protectiveness because we have now have the opportunity to protect where we are at and to know how to protect without disregarding you in the room and without dishonoring you from where you are required to be at in the room, right? Being mankind on this earth. And therefore, that representation of the sound is that there is everything that is happening about you and around you, and the you that you are familiar with, and the womb that you know that you represent with your every reaction. But there is that requirement to be protective with accepting the education that has been granted us concerning being a woman on this earth. It is an education that we all want to voice for ourselves in season, but we all have been educated that our seasons have got so many colors. And some colors are faded away, some colors are brighter, some colors are white, some colors are black. And therefore we are required to accept that there is not gonna oppose you and there is not gonna oppose the other within this season of being such a woman of color. and within accepting that the color's brightness, that the color's questioning, that the sound that relates to the color, that your response in your season of color is that response that is gonna be that there is acceptance, and that is gonna be not in contrast to you, the woman in your season. That is gonna not challenge you, the woman in your season. Because if you had the opportunity and have the opportunity to be the woman in season, then why would you sometimes question yourself in that, right? Why would you sometimes put yourself in danger when you are being challenged with another woman, right? Why would you sometimes question yourself in what you are sometimes being challenged with? Why would you sometimes have yourself be deprived of where you are required to be at? And therefore, in the complete protectiveness of how you respond to yourself and in your season, with being such a woman of color, you respond with that. There is complete acceptance and protectiveness of where you are required to be at in your season of color. And therefore, I always say that we do not go and we do not challenge ourselves, right? And we also do not challenge one another, because our challenges would have us in opposition to someone else and would have us depriving of where we are required to be sometimes, right? And would be that you can ask yourself, why would you want to question yourself then? If you challenge yourself, it means you are questioning yourself, right? And sometimes when you question yourself, I've mentioned on Saturday, then you are sometimes being transformed into something that you are now totally not, right? And that is now not totally responding to the you in your season. And therefore, when we allow ourselves to affirm ourselves with complete acceptance of where we are required to be, we allow ourselves to not question where we find ourselves at, being part of mankind and being part of the amazingness of the woman in our season. It is that some people educate and say, but the womb exists, yes, of both the man, the woman, yes, but the representation, the honor that belongs to both the man and woman is how do they accept and respond to themselves without having to question where they find themselves at in this season. It is that with all requirement of the careness, the nurturingness, the parenting of your womb, the parenting of you in your season, is that you have that you are the color within that you respond to it. You are the color with that you parent with. And even the seasons are speaking along with us, right? So we today are not going to focus, when we listen to our discussion, we are not going to focus on the light and on the sun, because we are in a season where the season are color, and the color changes, and the color requires us to abide ourselves with that is going to be non-depriving to us, that's going to be non-abusive to where we find ourselves at, that is going to be non-challenging to how you are required to respond where you are at in your season, but there is going to be complete acceptance of where you were birthed to be at in your season. And it is therefore an honor for me to represent our such woman of color season, word representing Ribea Elise in a season. I'm gonna rephrase that. It is an honor for me to represent such women of color in our season and in our generation, with representing Ribea Elise being born to be part of the season, to be part of our generation. And therefore we listen to that when people question Ribea Elise in a season, Ribea Elise find herself in that she has accepted the honor that belongs to the womb, that belongs to Ribea Elise in a season. When we are being challenged in our seasons, we accept that the honor has allowed us to not challenge ourselves while we are being challenged in a season. And when we are being transformed, are being required to transform to that, that is someone else's opinion about you, you allow yourself to find yourself in that. That is the sound, the birth sound in your womb, that requires exactly to that. That is gonna be protected to where you are required to respond at. And therefore, with such a well of women of color, the birthness of the womb echoes, and the birthness of the womb prepares for a rebirth season, prepares for seasons that are refined, that are therefore redefined, right? And redefining where we are at in our seasons, redefining the Mama Anna name in that it explains exactly to us the Mama Anna education that's required in our generation, that we are revived at in our seasons, that we remind ourselves that we exist from that. That is our every reaction and our every opportunity to react to that. That is protected for us in our seasons. And therefore our color season and the birthness of the color of you representing you in your season is the you that represents yourself with completeness of where you are required to be at in your season. You representing yourself with the birthnesses in your season are the you that represents you with the completeness of where you are required to be at in your season. Completeness means you're not gonna be aggressive when people are aggressing you. You're not gonna be abusive when someone else are abusing you. You're not gonna be depriving yourself when you are giving an opinion about someone else or about yourself in your season. And you are therefore not gonna be humiliated to yourself when you are questioned by someone else about yourself in your season. When we are being introduced to someone else, we have that there is complete acceptance of ourselves in our every season. And therefore, that is how we honor the womb of the woman in her season. She represents her strength, she represents her birth fact and her birth requirement in every season. That requirement that when someone else are challenged, they exactly look upon the woman to react upon that. That is the challenges in our generation. She is that she finds courage in that there is sometimes oppressive and there is sometimes abusive, and there is the clear you, the kind you in every requirement of you that can sometimes be challenging to you, the woman. And therefore, with honoring our wombs today, we honor the woman born from the womb and the woman that birthed the womb in season, that birthed from the womb in season. Yes, we can also say, I always say, I never speak wrong. We can also say, yes, the woman that birthed the womb. When you birth the woman, you birth the womb. And to find yourself in that you have birthed exactly the representation of you. I know that mankind are trying to find out whether the man can also give birth, and the man is also the womb in our season, but we exactly speak of that we were educated about. Because why would we question ourselves, and why would we question the birthness of our generation? A woman that gives birth to a man, amazing. Why? Because such is the womb of the woman. The strength of it, that birthness that you have given is explained in the birth of in the opportunity that you get to give birth to a man, right? But your strength does not limit you if you have given birth to women only, right? Why? Because there's so much things that women, that humanity do nowadays to deprive one another, that is miscarriages and a lot of things that goes along with it. And therefore, we do not question when we look upon one another, we do not question that, but we honor and educate in that. That is the required education in our season. And therefore, we learn that when we listen to one another, you can clearly hear when we are really in that requires us to respond with that. There is gonna be non-aggressive to how we educate into what we educate in our season. And that non-aggression is where we want to be at with our generation's challenges in our season. That is the different colors that are being introduced. There's the church life, there's the club style, there's drug and alcohol abuse, there is the normal community society that doesn't go to church and that doesn't attend church, that doesn't drink alcohol also, and that has found their way through life without all of without the alcohol, without the added advantages of it. And we have as human beings a requirement to accept one another on earth and to not argue with one another what we are finding challenged about when we are learning of someone else, right? Or when we are being introduced to someone else. Then we do not question one another in that way. And therefore, I have in this season stepped out of church so that I can find myself in that. There is a complete color of our generation. And I had to do it. Why? Because in church I might have been questioned, right? If I would have found myself in the education that is in mankind that has to accept the completeness of what they have been educated about themselves and about the universe. And when we were educated about the completeness of all the colors in a generation, then we are required to find that that is protected for us in where we are being educated at. And therefore, complete acceptance of all that we are educated about is that protective environment that we respond to when we are being educated about all the different colors and about having to accept one another, because such is this amazing universe and such is amazing God of the universe, right? That requires us to accept everything about God and to not only want to find ourselves in the education. There is maybe a church group, but when the church group are being challenged, then the church group should learn to accept one another, even with that someone else might not agree with. A challenge is not necessarily that you are doing wrong, no. A challenge is that someone else might question what you are doing and how you are educating and how the universe are educating you in your season. And therefore the birth womb is familiar to you, a woman, but it might be unfamiliar. Your birth womb, my mama Anna birth womb, is familiar to me in my season, but it might not be familiar to someone else who has learned that Mama Anna was maybe in church, but they did not realize that Mama Anna, the woman that birthed the children, right, the seventh born children, where Ribea, Elise is the seventh birth of them children. And therefore, we have to allow ourselves to have complete acceptance of that. That is, when we are educated about all of the colors, then we are not going to question. We are going to be in that that's protective, and we are also going to be in that is acceptive to the one, the other in our generation. And therefore, our generation will find ourselves rebirthed, refined, and revived in every new season. That is called the something new era to our generation. And therefore, we are not going to question ourselves in our season. And when we learn that our countries find it challenging to accept one another, then where we can educate, we educate with that. There is going to be non-abusive to the other, but that's also not going to be depriving you of where you are required to be. Because some people might question and say that you are now only a church person, and the church people doesn't accept normal people, and the other people question, the church people question and say, but that person was in church and they are not allowed to now be the normal you that dresses with colors that are all over the place, nudity on your fashion page or on your business page, and with all the colors required in your season. And therefore, because there's so much argument with that we are required to receive and accept in our generation, we sometimes learn to do that is going to be protective to us in both circumstances. So that our generation can get over that is that aggress them when they are being introduced to someone else that might differ of opinion, that the lifestyle choices might be different, the household upbringing might be different. And when we are educated about the difference, then we learn to accept unique, and we learn to accept the completeness of that we are required to accept in our generation. We know that we can sometimes honestly say a lot, and we can sometimes explain it thoroughly, because we really want our listeners to really find that there is protectiveness in what we are saying, that there is non-depriving with where we are required to be at, and with where they are required to be at in different countries, having to listen into the education. But it is that when they educate about how open-minded they are, being human beings on earth, then they should educate in that there is protective for them in their countries, right? That is protective to where they find themselves at, because some countries are very much more traditional than the other, and therefore the parenting right is that they should respect and they should honor the womb of their parents and of their mama when educating something different in our countries. Yeah, so that our generation doesn't find themselves in argument and in question with us educating in our season, and with where we are required to be at in our season. And that is where we are at with our people of color, with our women of color, right? Yes, with such a women of color in this part of what we want to discuss. Another part of what we want to say is the fact that our such woman of color reminds us of when Mama Anna gave birth, right? Mama Anna gave birth to her first daughter, right? First birth was a woman, baby Yuna. Her name was Yuna, yes. Not to the city of Nineveh, no, but Yuna was her name, yes. And she was the firstborn of Mama Anna. She was alive until 6 months old, and then Brother Martin was born. And after Brother Martin was born, Brother Martin is the baby that testifies from the womb of Mama Anna still today. Yes, because he's the first man. Mama Anna gave birth, woman, man, man, woman, woman, man, right? So Mama Anna gave birth, Joanna, Martin, Richard, Zach, Antoinette, Anton, and Ribea. So in between every woman is a man. But there was three generations of them that were born after the other. Martin was born, Richard was born, Zach was born after the other, right? And then it was a woman again, Antoinette, and then the equalization of man and woman birth from the womb. So in that, the education of the three generations born from the same womb. Brother Martin's father, he's right also from somewhere in California. Yes, his late father. His father passed away a few 2 years ago, 70 years old, yeah. So Brother Martin's father is in California, or used to be in California, yes. And Brother Richard's father is all the way from Africa, the three generations birth from Mama Anna's womb. Brother Richard's father, the three generation men birth from Mama Anna's womb. Brother Richard's father was from Africa, and then Brother Zach, my eldest brother, our papa, is also from Africa, birthed in South Africa. That is the Humbatan. And therefore, the three generations born from the different papa family line that speaks of the three generations. That is the how does the Bible say, the double portion born is the three generations birth from the womb of our Mama Anna, right? That the Bible educates us about. And that double portion is the different requirement in education, but that requirement to accept one another, because everyone's family line is different, right? I can see that Brother Martin's family line is a bit light in skin color, yes. Mama Rita, them, Scoutbakes are also light in skin color with green eyes, yes. And Mama Martha also light in skin color. But Mama Anna and we came out very blessed in skin color. For many reasons, yes. But the requirement of acceptance within our generation are really that our family represents in season. That we are birthed really from different parts. Mama Anna's mother from Africa somewhere. She looks very European. She's very light in skin color. And she's also that from Africa, things happened in our generation. And what happens is a requirement for the womb of humanity to accept one another. And that was educated in our household, in our family lines. And therefore, for us to learn to accept the one, the other, is that education that we have to learn to listen to what's the requirement to educate in our generation. What is our generation finding themselves being challenged at? And how is it that we respond to that, that we educate without aggressing someone else in our generation also? And therefore, our family has decided to not educate very harshly what we find ourselves in. But we have learned that people are tuned into us and that they listen to how we educate, and that they find a way in understanding the completeness of color required, the completeness of accepting the color response in our generation. It is the response of life itself. It is the giver of life itself that has allowed my Mama Anna's womb to educate in such a way, right? And it is that we find life within ourselves when we accept that there is the education of one another in our seasons. And therefore, with honoring our mama's womb, I really appreciate the education of my sister Antoinette. And Antoinette on Instagram has got thousands and thousands of listeners from all over the world that listens to her, into her education in season. And she only voices with her fashion. And she in church, yes, she's worshiping in church, and yes, ministering in church. And with her education on Instagram and on social media, she has that she educates very firmly about. She's not aggressive, she's not gonna be upfront, she's not gonna be in someone else's way about it, but she's also now not gonna be someone else to be in that they do not realize what is happening around them when they find themselves in such a lot of colors, different nationalities, different traditions, different household upbringings, and they do not realize how to accept the completeness of that that's required of them to accept in our generation. So yeah, Antoinette educates in a way of her fashion voice, that she doesn't say it with words, but how she voices, with how she dresses is complete requirement to accept and to respond to that you are required to respond when you view in on her pages. And she really educates firm in her household. And I remember visiting my sister in 2017, right? And in 2016, how fond I was of how she educates. She's not harsh with her way of educating. She's not harsh with what she's saying, but she's very firm on her parenting, right? She's very firm on responding to that. That is her being the mama in the house, and that is that her education is that she does not negotiate her parenting, right? And she does not negotiate her womb with nothing at all. And that is so important for our generation to learn, that the womb is one of those things that you do not negotiate about. Sometimes we have educated ourselves not to have friends. I know I have been like that, and Jeanette have been like that. And we have educated ourselves to be in the parentingness in our household sometimes, where we are required to be at, and rather tell our friends sometimes to just wait a bit while we are parenting in our households and while we are being parented in our households. And therefore, when we find ourselves challenged as a generation with having to learn how to parent our young people, we have to allow ourselves to listen to that requirement of how you should parent, how you are required to parent. And when you get into that, there is quietness in that parenting response. Then you would respond exactly with that. That is the you in every reaction that you have. And I remember Antoinette educating us that in her fashion modeling on Instagram, and then everyone would view in on how she models, and then she would say that that's how we respond to that. Every attitude reaction becomes natural own to you when you listen intently to how you are required to respond in your season. And therefore we honor that. That is our mama's womb. Yes, our baby Ruseki, our Melvin, Zanzak, Henson, yes, Melvin Henson, our grandchildren, we honor them. Yes, from their mama's wombs, amazing family that becomes one, right? That our generation has to learn that family is acceptance, right? Is that we allow ourselves to accept concerning ourselves and concerning the one the other. And it is an amazing part of the universe. And yeah, so that is where we are at toward our such woman of color, how you respond to your womb in season, and how do you respond to that. That is your requirement to be protective with you in your season. That is it with me, Ribea, Elise. Today we have a lot of time that we can still discuss a lot of things. So we are going to just allow our listeners to just hold on to this education of such women of color, so that when they are challenged in their households and in different countries where people travel to, then they would exactly learn to allow themselves to listen to that. That is that requirement to accept the completeness of what they are educated, but without depriving themselves with where they are required to be at in these seasons. And therefore, let us allow ourselves to listen to that. That is the every you, and that remains the every you in your season. Have an amazing such a woman of color season.